Okay, so we are going to continue our journey through evolution. In this chapter, we're going to talk about all the evidence that we have for evolution or Darwin's theory of evolution. In last chapter, I showed you a slide. I said, oh, there is Mendelian genetics, there are fruit fly examples. So we're going to look at all the evidence that supports evolution. And it's a lot. It's a lot of evidence because this has been collected for a long, long time now. So life on Earth came around 3.8 billion years ago. So this is the origin of Earth. 4.6 billion is nine zeros, million is 6 zeros. So this is when origin of Earth happened, and it was sterile for a while. And then after, not for too long, if you really think about this. And around 3.8 billion years ago is when we were able to date back the first cell. So they can use carbon dating for that. We'll talk a little bit about that in this chapter. So they were able to date back to this time. That's when the first cell came around. So that's life on Earth arose about 3.8 billion. This is an important number. I want you to know this. And then this was maybe the first cell, single cell, and then maybe turned into prokaryotes here, maybe eukaryotes, multicellular organisms. So it started with a simple cell and then got maybe more complex over time. There might be some changes in body structures and molecules that happen, and you're gonna notice it happened very slowly here, very slowly here, but then after that, it happened a little bit quickly compared to these times. So that produced different organisms. So maybe first there was just single cell, then multicellular, then those multicellular turned into animals, plants, so different things. I don't need you guys to memorize this. This is just to show you which era it was. You can read about it if you're interested, but I'm not gonna have you name any of this. So this is called geological time scale. Scientists, they divide the time in history into eons and eras. These ones here, again, like I said, you don't have to memorize these. And they are defined with major geological events. Maybe there was a mass extinction. Maybe here is when oxygen came around and caused the first mass extinction or something like that. So that's how they divide this geological time scale. This is an example of a fossil. So you can tell this is imprint of a leaf. It's not actual leaf. Maybe this leaf fell and there was some dust and soil fell on top of that, and it just got solid over time, turned into rock, and then the imprint got mineralized. It's not actual leaf, but it's an imprint of a leaf. You can look at this leaf and you can see maybe if the same shape of the trees or the plants exist today. So that's something that's called fossil. Fossil is not actual organism, it's a remnant of that organism, like an imprint. So this is a first evidence that we have fossils. Have you guys heard about woolly mammoth?
Yes.
Yes.
So that,
I have.
what do you guys heard about it?
It's an old creature that's kind of like elephants today, but it had fur on it, and they were huge.
So
yeah, they roam North America.
yeah, so there was a woolly mammoth that was found, and this actually had, it was frozen for really long time, and there was actual DNA that you could get from this woolly mammoth. Whereas here, you don't have the actual plant leaf, it's just the imprint of that. So I'm just trying to tell you some differences here. So it's not actual leaf, it's just imprint of it, that's a fossil. Whereas here you have the actual DNA that you can get. There's maybe some even meat left on it if it's frozen for a long, long time. So here, using fossils, and now we have DNA technology, we can also look at our anatomy, means our bone structure, and we can compare to other animals. We can see if species are related to one another. Here, this graph is showing number of amino acids that might differ between species. So we have humans here. We're comparing these to humans. Rhesus monkey has maybe a few of them that differ from humans. Mouse has a little bit more, maybe 25. Chicken has more. So we can use this evidence of molecular sequencing to see how many amino acids differ and how closely related we are. If we were in class, I would tell you that if we are talking about species, that you're 100% related to the student sitting next to you. And you might say, oh, we look completely different. And then you probably heard about how your siblings are 25% related to you. That is true. That is true when you're comparing the differences between the family members. But if we're talking about species, we all are humans. We are the same species. So when you're looking at species, all the human species, they are 100% related because they're the same species. But if you start looking at the difference, which is 0.999% or something, then you start seeing some differences between the humans. Maybe you look different, maybe you have different color hair or something like that. So those differences go for that 0.99 or 0.099% or whatever that number is. This is the first fossil, or this is not the first fossil, the fossil that goes back to 3.8 billion years. So that's called stromatolite. So stromatolite, this is the fossil that they found. It's the oldest known fossil to humans. I need you to know the name. This is very important. I need you to know the name of a stromatolite fossil. So this is bacteria. This looks like coral leaf, but this is just bacteria, photosynthetic bacteria. And this is fossilized. So it's got fossilized. These still exist today. So if you were interested in seeing this, you could go to West Coast of Australia. But there's nothing else there. I really want to go see this, but I don't want to travel for a week and then just see this and be like, now what? There's nothing else around there, but these still exist today. So this is stromatolite. That's the simple first organism that existed, and we dated this back using carbon dating to 3.8 billion years. So this supports Darwin's theory of evolution, that first we had simple cells, and then it got maybe more complex. So this is a simple organism, and then it got more complex maybe over time. Paleontology is the study of fossil remains on or other clues of past life. So this would be an example. And then the fossils, they provide the original evidence for evolution. So stromatolite, please highlight this. I will ask you this on the exam, and I might ask you how back far can you go with this fossil? That's 3.8 billion years. There are some other fossil examples that your book provides. So here's petrified wood. Here's poop. So maybe by looking at poop, you can tell what this animal is used to eat. Here's a footprint. They can look at the footprint and see maybe how heavy the animal was or how fast they ran or something like that. Bones are the first basically big evidence they looked at. So there's all different kinds of fossil evidence that they can find. So there's another one. I don't know if you guys heard that they found new evidence for dinosaurs. Have you guys heard about that? Through fossils?
No.
No. So this is the fossil they found, and they said we need to go back and redraw our photos for the dinosaurs, because according to this fossil, they had wings. So that's the new evidence they found. This is called Archaeopteryx. Dinosaurs, they had wings. So there's an update. We need to update the pictures of dinosaurs that we draw because they found this new evidence here. Another thing about fossils is that there are missing links. That means people who do not want to agree with the fossil evidence, they say you cannot really show me going from this step to this step, or from this species to this species, or they say, well, you cannot show me that fish turned into amphibian because you don't have all the evidence. So there are missing links, and I will tell you the reason why there are missing links. So even though the fossil evidence is diverse, it's often challenging or impossible to find fossils between the groups. So you might find a fossil for this, and then you might find a fossil for this, and then there'll be these two missing links. But we do have one perfect example, and that's this one here. So now there are no missing links between the ancestor of a horse and the modern horse. So the ancestor of the horse was called Heracothyrium, and they were able to find all the links between Heracothyrium and today's modern horse Equus. So we were able to find all the changing species in between. So there are no missing links. It's a perfect example of evolution. So the reason this fossil evidence is kind of biased means you have a lot of evidence for one species, you might not have enough for the other. It depends on basically if that species can even be fossilized. So if they're soft bodied, like a jellyfish, they won't be fossilized. So that's the reason fossil record is incomplete, because some organisms, such as with soft bodies, they fail to fossilize. If it's an organism that is maybe has hard shell that can get fossilized, and you'll have evidence for that organism. So that's why it's kind of biased, depending on if it can even get fossilized. Also, erosion and movement of tectonic plates might destroy fossils. So you might not even be able to find it even if it got fossilized, because it got lost through tectonic plates, because the environment is changing and a lot of different things are happening. So that's why fossil evidence is biased. Here's another example. These are found in a landmass. So this kind of tells, I think it's in Oklahoma. Yeah, so Oklahoma showed that there was water once there. So now they are landlocked, but there was water, they were covered in water once. So that's another evidence. So fossils can help us kind of piece the history together, maybe what was there before, what was happening during that time. I've shown you this picture before. So I shown you this picture before. Actually, another thing I wanted to tell you that I thought was interesting, that San Jose was at the equator before the tectonic plates started moving around. And they can tell that because there are some plant species that are tropical that would be at the equator that still exist today. So that kind of gives an evidence that it was at the equator and maybe tectonic plates moved around. So I shown you this before, it's the Grand Canyon. And I said that, depending on what's happening at that time, if there is global warming, different plant species are around during the global warming versus the ice age, those get fossilized. That creates a layer. Then you have another time, maybe something different is happening at that time. So another layer is created with the rocks or the dust falling down, and it might be different colors. So when we start dating the fossils, you can just do it with the relative dating. Means if you were just looking at this, the layers that are under, they're older compared to the ones on the top, they're newer layers. That's relative dating. That just assumes that lower rock layers have older fossils than the newer rock layers. So it's not exact number we're putting. We're just saying if it's on the bottom, it's older. If it's on the top, it's newer. So dating fossils is gonna give us clues about the timeline. So they were able to do carbon dating with the stromatolite. That's how they're able to say it's 3.8 billion years old. It's the exact number they're giving you. It's not saying, oh, it's older layer or the newer. It's not relative dating. It's not. They're giving you exact absolute dating. That's what it's called, absolute dating. So absolute dating is when they're using chemistry to determine how long ago a fossil formed. So maybe, exact number, 3.8 billion years. And to do this absolute dating, they use something that's called radiometric dating. They look at carbon-14. So they use radioactive isotopes. They look at carbon-14, and then using that carbon-14, they're able to get how old this fossil is. So to do this, living organism is 100% carbon-14 because you're eating, you're replenishing that carbon-14. So there's carbon-12 and carbon-14. Right after you die, that carbon-14 starts to leave. It goes down because you're not eating now, you're not replenishing that carbon-14. So carbon-14 starts to decay after death, right after death. So here, someone who's alive, their carbon-14 is 100%. Then they die. And they were able to figure out half-life. Half-life is the rate of decay of carbon-14. The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. And once you have the half-life, that means once someone dies, if it was 100%, in 5,730 years, it's going to go at 50%. That's the half-life. In another 5,730 years, it's going to go to 25%. Maybe in another 5,730 years, it's going to go to 12.5%. And it's going to continue decaying. It never really reaches zero, so it's an asymptote, but it's going to start declining. And this is the half-life in this case. So I can give you a question. Maybe I can say, let me see. I can say I have a fossil that has half-life of, I'm gonna give you absolute number here, maybe 5,000 years. And then I can say what percent of carbon-14 will be remaining after 10,000 years. So can you guys answer that? So if you have a, if I have a fossil that has half-life of 5,000 years, not 730 here, I'm giving you actual exact number, 5,000 years. What percent is remaining after 10,000 years?
25%?
25%, because in 5,000 years, it's gonna go to 50. In another 5,000 years, it's gonna go to 25. So you can expect those type of questions on the exam. So on Canvas, are you ready for chapter 13? I gave you some examples where you have to calculate the number. So make sure you do that. Even if you don't do the extra credit, just make sure you do that question. So here is written out for you. Organisms accumulate carbon-14, that's a radioactive isotope with carbon-12. Living organisms have constant amount, which means it's 100% when you're living. Is after organism dies, starts to decline. Carbon-12 or carbon-14 is added. And then carbon-14 decays at a constant rate, and the rate is this. And then during any 5,730 year period, amount of carbon-14 is divides in half. In other words, half-life of carbon-14 is this. You don't have to memorize the number. I will give you the number that I want you to work with, but this is an example. So by determining the amount of carbon-14 in a fossil, scientists can estimate when the organism lived. So they can get the exact number for that. Another thing with the fossils, they can date it back. So they dated back the oldest tree, which is the bristle pine cone. It's the oldest tree. Here, so that's the oldest tree that exists. So they were able to date this back exactly using carbon dating. So they can do something like this using this carbon dating here. So there's a question, which rock layer, A, B, or C, should have fossils with the most carbon-14?